So I'm your left-wing host, Brittany, and this is your right-wing host, Todd. How are you, Todd?
Doing great, Britt. How you doing?
I'm doing good. And I know you were texting me that my mic's on. You did this last time too. That's not my mic being on. It's just in the way it was recorded. We'll have to clean it up. But yeah, no, it's not my mic being on. Like
Oh,
you
I'm
can't have a
sorry.
mic on.
My bad.
I was
My
gonna text
bad.
you
I
that.
was trying to
No.
help. Trying to help.
I know. I meant to text you back that, but I just figured I would just say it now, just so everybody else knows as well. All right. So, yeah, we have a debate for you guys tonight. It's going to be with somebody who is brand new to the debate stage on Politically Provoked, and we have a returning guest. So they will be debating welfare. So let's bring on our guests. Let's bring on our returning guest, Foxglove. How are you tonight?
I'm fantastic. Thank you again for having me on. Always a pleasure.
So if you want to introduce yourself, tell people where you lie on the political spectrum and where people can find you.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Foxglove. I make videos semi-occasionally on YouTube and just hang out on Twitter. I'd consider myself a social democrat, not a communist or a socialist or anything. And yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Foxglove or on Twitter at FoxgloveCurta.
All right, thank you. So next up, we have Cut Sleeve. How are you tonight? You're muted.
Hello?
There you go.
I'm fine. Do you want me to introduce myself?
Yeah, say same questions.
Yeah. My name is Cutsleep. You can find me on the Discord. I lean more on the Libertarian side. That's all you need to know about me.
All right. All right, so here is what we will do. Each person can give an opening statement, can be as little as 1 minute, no longer than 5, about the topic and what your stance is. After that, we will open up the floor. After the open discussion, we'll go into a Q&A. You guys watching can tag Politically Provoked who your question is addressed to. We should be able to get to them all. After the Q&A, we will go into closing statements and final thoughts. So I don't think I need to bring up the rules, just limit the constant interruptions and no personal attacks, and that should do it. So Foxglove, why don't you get us going with opening statements?
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you again for having me on, and thank you, Cutsleeve, for coming on and having this convo with me, man. I really appreciate it. So my opening statement is going to be relatively brief and relatively broad, because welfare is a very broad group of policies. That being said, I'm taking the affirmative position that welfare is not only justified in its many forms of existence, but that it would be in our own interest to preserve and expand it. Welfare encompasses an extremely broad group of policies, and I find it very hard to justify that there should be no welfare full stop, even if you may have problems with specific programs. While I do agree that market mechanisms are good at lifting those out of poverty, jobs and private charity only go so far, and they don't go far enough. Looking at the effects of welfare programs such as Social Security, the EITC, the CTC, SNAP, and more, I believe that we would need a very good reason to throw these policies out. And while they may not be perfect, no policy is, if we want to get rid of them, we need a very good reason. Especially when welfare already lifts millions out of poverty, both inside and outside the United States, as well as brings about a host of positive externalities.
All right, thank you. So yeah, Cutsleeve. But you're muted again.
1 2 1 2. Can you guys hear me? All right. When we say welfare, we have to talk about real specific on what we're actually going to talk about. There are 7 different types of welfare in America. They include Medicaid, Supplemental Security Income, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Child Health Insurance Program, Temporary Assistance to Needed Family, Housing Assistance, and Earned Income Tax Credit. Over my analysis of the data and articles, I have come to the conclusion that welfare, excluding Medicaid, is an overall net negative for several reasons. Increase in Social Security nets come from taxes. UC Berkeley did a study that assistance programs cost taxpayers $150 billion. Next is the idea of biopolitics. Biopolitics was founded by Kay Jelen. It is the theory that states that as soon as you give the government the control to make you function, you also give the government the power to make you not function. This applies to welfare because people are essentially relying on their government for food, their job, and all essential things needed to live. Next, it's ineffective and racist. So overall of the war on poverty, it decreased child poverty by 1%, while massively increasing single-parent households. The effect of single-parent households are deadly. One of the main reasons welfare fails is because it's not privatized. So when you die, that money goes poof instead of to your kin's wallet. LBJ even said as much. This comes from a racist system. He said he will have these N-words voting Democrat for years. His plan was to get people, more importantly black people, hooked on the government so they would vote for more government every time. These reasons aren't collateral. They act as independent reasons to oppose welfare. Now you say, where's the solution to these problems? How about we take that $1 trillion that we spend on welfare and spend it on other means, like unions, socially encouraging a two-parent household structures, increasing immigration holdings facilities so we don't have to throw kids in cages, decrease in taxes, and more programs like that. This is a better use of $1 trillion. So not only does my opponent have to argue that welfare is good on its own, but that it's the best solution. I yield.
All right. So yeah, the floor is open now, Foxglove.
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually going to let you start with a specific issue that you like to start with, because my opening statement was relatively broad, but you seem to have some specific issues that you would like to talk about. So what's your problem? So you said that the only justified welfare program was Medicaid. So what's your problem with something like the EITC, for example, the Earned Income Tax Credit?
Right. So my problem is the outcomes of these things. The Earned Income Tax Credit, in my theory of it, my reading of it, has tax credits to specific things, acts, or positions that you hold. If you're a single parent mother, they'll give you a tax credit. If you have more babies than one, you get a tax credit. Some tax credits can be used effectively, but have they been used in the United States have not been effective. And I can show you those studies.
So when you say that they're not effective, can you tell me what that means? Because the Earned Income Tax Credit has been one of the most useful welfare policies, not only at getting people back to work, but also at reducing child poverty. For example, I'm sure you're familiar with the American Rescue Plan.
Explain.
Yeah, so the American Rescue Plan, it includes an expansion on the EITC and the introduction of the CCC, and in conjunction with other welfare programs, according to the Urban Institute, there have been a number of projections. One of them is that child poverty is to be cut in half. Another is that the number of people in poverty will be reduced by 16 million. Poverty to fall by 42% for Black individuals, 39% for Hispanic individuals, and 34% for white individuals, reducing poverty disparities. So I just need something more specific when you say you have a problem with the EITC, because looking at those projections, it seems pretty useful.
Yeah, specifically overall, LBJ gave billions of dollars into 6 of these programs, and none of them were effective. You say they might have cut in child poverty. The projections were to cut child poverty in half, but we've done this for over 50 years, and it cut child poverty by only 1%. I'll send you that link.
So what you're talking about is the official poverty rate, right?
No, child poverty.
Right, which comes from the official poverty rate. So the problem with the official poverty rate is that it does not take into account non-cash assets, things like SNAP, things like the EICT, and other non-cash assets. And in fact, it was actually so flawed that the U.S. Census Bureau has switched to doing another type of measure to measure poverty called the supplemental poverty measure. And I can link you that as well. And the supplemental poverty measure shows a much more dramatic decrease in poverty over time.
Right.
So my problem with the official poverty rate is when you look at poverty and you exclude all of the effects of welfare, essentially, it sure does look like welfare doesn't do a lot. But when you look at the more updated way of calculating poverty, the supplemental poverty index, which is now used by the official U.S. Census Bureau, you see a much more substantial decrease in poverty.
Yeah, can you link that?
Yep, one sec.
Are you able to see in the private chat? Oh, I know that's yours that you said that. Okay.
So that article talks about the problems of the official, like traditional way of calculating poverty, and the second link is the official census of them explaining how they calculate supplemental poverty.
Yeah. So even if I grant you that supplemental poverty is a better way to calculate how poor people are, I do not think it outweighs the drastic ways in which we have encouraged single-parent households. Because by the stats that I've read, single-parent households is the greatest indicator of crime, poverty, and other deadly aspects like that.
Sure. So if you want to assert that, so if you go back on your position and say that, okay, welfare has actually affected poverty, it has actually decreased poverty when we look at a more updated, a more modern way of looking at poverty. But now well, yeah, you just said if I concede to you that the supplemental poverty measure is the right way of doing it, and that it actually has decreased poverty. So now you're moving to, okay, well, that doesn't matter because like an increase in single parent households is rising because of this. I'm kind of confused where you're.
I said I don't actually agree, or I haven't looked at supplemental poverty as a whole.
Okay.
But even if supplemental poverty is a greater way to measure poverty, that doesn't prove that the war on poverty was successful. That just proves that we have another mechanism of measuring poverty. And even if the war on poverty did decrease poverty to a percentage, you have to balance out the percentage that the war on poverty decreased poverty by the deadly effects of one, increasing the U.S. debt, two, spending that money on what they actually did spend it on instead of other avenues, and three, the single parent household problem.
So do you believe that, first of all, I can link you this screenshot. I know it's kind of, oh, hold on, let me put that again. So this graph, it's a screenshot from the Vox article, or it's a screenshot from a study that was linked in the Vox article, and it shows the
I can pull stuff up if you guys need to.
Sure.
If you do like a screen share, and then I can pull it up.
Yeah, can you screen share it?
Yes, let me just. Hold on. Okay, do you see it? I've never screen shared on this before.
Wait, that doesn't look too promising. Can you explain to me? Maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Yeah, so the green line is the pre-tax, pre-transfer anchored SPM. So that is the poverty rate before taking into all of the welfare programs that the official poverty leaves out.
Are you able to make it a little bigger?
Yeah, make it bigger.
Yeah, let me zoom in.
Yeah.
It's kind of low quality. It should be somewhere on the Vox article as well. And then the blue line shows the effects on poverty once those programs are actually taken into account. So you see they both start around the same point, around 27%. But you can see over time, it starts at 1967 and goes to 2012. Over time, poverty rate has decreased dramatically.
This says affects taxes and transfers on poverty rate. We're not talking about taxes right now.
Taxes and transfers refers to the various welfare programs that the official poverty rate leaves out. That's why this entire graph was made. It's a direct graph of the supplemental poverty measure. And we can see that on the green graph, the green line shows the official poverty rate before taking into account the taxes and transfers. The blue line is the supplemental poverty rate. And you can see that there's a dramatic decrease, the green line approaching 30%, while the blue line closer to 15%. That is dramatic.
Okay. So you're saying the green line is the markup numbers and blue line taking into account supplemental poverty rate?
Yes, the blue line takes into account the more updated version of a way of calculating poverty.
So you're saying from 50 years, we do $10 trillion into the hole just for a 5% decrease in poverty? Because that's what that graph showed, a 25% poverty rate to a 20% poverty rate. Also,
wait, hold on. Actually do a 15% poverty rate, right?
Wait, you pull up that graph again.
It's right here.
25% to 15, is that 15? Okay, 15. Okay. Yeah. So even if I grant you that, one, that doesn't mean it's correlative to the welfare state, because guess what we also had? We had multiple wars. And the U.S. is one of the most profitable people when it comes to wars.
Hold on.
Market.
This graph specifically looks at poverty rate before taking into taxes and transfers and after. This does not include any type of war mongering.
Wait. What I'm saying is from 1967 to 2012, using the measure of supplemental poverty rate, we can use from that time period, there might have been other aspects of the US that might have decreased poverty.
Maybe.
Okay,
But this only shows the difference between the green line and the blue line, only shows the difference between the pre-tax transfers, the welfare programs. So there might have been other external factors, but as you can see here, even if there were on the green line, it didn't really affect poverty that much, right? If we're only looking at outside factors on the effects of poverty, then we can just look at the green line. And as you can see, poverty actually has increased.
Wait,
but when we actually...
So to be specifically clear, are you saying that you told me that this measure was a difference between the looking at it through a regular poverty rate and looking at it through supplemental poverty rate, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay, so these are just two different types of measurements. It's not correlative or causative to the taxes or transfers. It's correlative or causative to the time. It's just saying as time goes on, our poverty decreases, but that could be for a million reasons.
So the reason why I brought this up is because you made the claim that welfare does not have an effect on poverty.
No, I didn't.
You said it's only budged like 1% or something, right? The war on poverty, 50 years, $10 trillion, only 1% decrease in poverty, right? You said that?
Of child poverty. But
sorry?
Of child poverty.
Of child poverty, sure. I'm sure you would have a similar number for overall poverty, right? So I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right. The official poverty rate hasn't really budged that much since the war on poverty. That's because the way that we measure poverty does not include those welfare programs, those non-cash assets like the EICT, like affordable housing, like Medicaid. It doesn't even include Medicaid, right? So the whole reason why I brought this up was because you made the claim that child poverty, and probably normal poverty as well, hasn't budged that much since the war on poverty began, right? So now I'm showing you that, yeah, the official poverty rate hasn't budged that much, but that's because it doesn't even take into account the welfare policies. So when we have an actual graph, have an actual measure of measuring the effectiveness of welfare policies, we see that there's a dramatic decrease in poverty rates over time.
Wait, okay. Are you saying the difference between this one the blue line and the green line was just like the Social Security were in fact, but just like no one like took into account it? Like, what did it? If we're just talking about two different lines on a graph and we're using two different methods of accounting for poverty, you wouldn't actually know what's causing that poverty to decrease.
Okay, so you're when we talk about the effectiveness of welfare, right? This is what this conversation is about. When we talk about the effectiveness of welfare, it's a pretty good idea to look at the poverty rate over time, right? The problem is that the traditional poverty rate does not take into account the changes or the effects of welfare, which doesn't really help our conversation at all, right?
Wait, explain what you mean by that. It doesn't take into account welfare. So like if I get welfare, like I'm just erased from the graph? What is it?
No, sorry, I should have been more specific. The problem with the traditional way of calculating poverty, like I said before, it does not take specific programs, welfare programs, into account. The EITC, affordable housing, Medicaid, and more like non-cash welfare programs, right? So when we talk about the effectiveness, when we're having a conversation about the effectiveness of welfare, what we're really talking about is how much has welfare decreased poverty, right? Does that make sense?
So
because that's welfare's goal, to decrease poverty. So when we're talking about the effectiveness of welfare, we should be talking about how much has poverty decreased as a result of welfare. And this is what this graph shows us. The green line is poverty before taking into account a lot of the non-cash assets that welfare provides, and the blue graph is after, right?
Right. Okay. I know what the blue graph and the green graph is. What is the normal? So are you saying the normal way we calculate poverty is a green graph?
Yep, that's the traditional way.
Yep, gotcha. Why don't we like take into account welfare? Like what happens to people when
because the Vox article goes into more history of that. We calculate poverty as something like 3 times the. It's like something like they measure it off of some sort of standard of living that was used in the 1950s. 3 times that amount. If an individual falls below that, they are considered to be in poverty. So it only takes into account their income. It doesn't take into account any other benefits from welfare.
So I removed the screen share. So
okay. So let's
shit. I I did that on accident. I accidentally did that. He's gonna have to come back. My bad. Hopefully he's it's the first time I ever had to do something like that, but sorry. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
no.
I'm sorry. That was my bad.
Okay. Yeah,
All right.
forgive you. It's okay.
Thanks. All right, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, we can look into the reason why the official poverty rate is flawed. It's because it only measures income. It doesn't take into account a lot of the welfare programs. That's the entire reason I brought up that graph. Is
Okay,
because
sure. Well, I'm not here to debate you on the method of poverty that we, use to measure it. So let's just say I concede the fact that because if we take into account the welfare programs, that poverty decreases by 10%. I still am not convinced that outweighs the negatives of welfare.
Sure, but I know this is kind of picky, but by 10 percentage points, not by 10%. So what other problems do you have?
What's the difference?
Well, so let's say that you have a statistic goes from 2% to 4%. It didn't increase by 2%, it increased by 100%. It increased by 2 percentage points, though, if that makes sense.
So it goes from 2% to 4%.
It's an increase of 100%, but it's an increase of 2 percentage points. I know it's kind of pedantic.
Okay. I get it now.
Yeah. So what other like things do you think? So we're past the poverty. It decreases poverty. What other like negative effects like do you think outweigh that?
Yeah, for sure. Specifically two. One is the idea of biopolitics, founded by Kay Gillen, the theory that the more reliant you are on the government, if you give the government to dictate state action in basically your life, you give the government the power to take away your life. And then second one was the specifically there are more ways or more and better and a more effective solutions of dealing with poverty and stuff like the amount of money we're spending in the solutions that we're seeing aren't enough. So I wouldn't say like $10 trillion is enough to justify a 10% decrease on poverty when there are other ways to decrease poverty.
Sure. So when you say $10 trillion, to be clear, you mean $10 trillion over the time of the war on poverty, right?
$10 trillion over the time of the war on poverty and $1 trillion annually from the United States after that.
Sure. So let's just go through these, I guess, one at a time. So what do you think is a good alternative to welfare? Like, do you think charity is better, or do you think like what do you think?
Sure. That $1 trillion we can spend on welfare can be used by government programs to encourage unions, to encourage two-parent household structures, increasing immigration holding facilities, and to decrease taxes.
Okay. So do you agree that people in poverty probably aren't very affected by high taxes?
Yes, I think everyone pays taxes.
Right. So, well, not really. If you make like $12,000 a year, it's something very, very small. So when we're talking about how to decrease poverty, I don't think using that $1 trillion to decrease taxes would really help those impoverished.
I think it would, and I have data to support my argument. Specifically under the Republicans administration, the single greatest effector of bottom 50% wealth was tax decreases. This goes from Trump to Bush to any other Republican who decreases taxes. I can send you that link there. It specifically outlines where is it?
I would be really interested to look at that, but we have to understand that every single tax cut is always going to disproportionately be well for people who are in the top tax brackets. People like
That's
the 1%.
not what it shows. It says the wealth held by the poorest half of American households increased 3 times as fast as the wealth held by 1%. There you go.
And how exactly does that prove that tax?
To be clear, this is just Trump's presidency as a whole, but I propose that he didn't really do much on the economic side except the tax.
I see. So you're saying that you're relating that wealth increase to a correlation in his tax cuts. Do you have any evidence that those are directly as a result from his tax cuts?
Sure. I could pull this up for you. The median household earnings of Black wealth went 5 times up.
dispute you in that fact. I'm just saying we need to find out if that's because of something else or as a direct like result
Yeah.
of Trump's tax
Wait,
cuts.
what else would it be? Just
It could
curious.
be like ever since 2012, we've been posting all-time highs on the stock market, on the S&P 500, right?
No,
It can be,
wait, that's not what I'm. No, specifically, it says the wealth held by the poorest half of American households increased.
I gotcha.
Fast. Okay, but that's not like an overall increase of everyone's wealth. That's a specific targeted community, specific targeted wealth, a specific comparison to another community. That's only because of tax cuts.
Do you have any data to support that? That's only because of tax cuts?
Sure.
It's not because of anything else. It's not because of the economy growing. It's not because of any sort of like stimulus. It's not because of welfare. Like,
sure.
Do you have like any that growth is only because of tax cuts?
Did you read the article?
No, I don't have time to like read an entire article while we sit here. I'm just saying. I also this article only talks about how the poorest half of American households increased wealth, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I said.
Right.
And
I'm not
go ahead.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just asking for evidence. I'm going to say, yeah, that's true. American households in the bottom half increased three times as fast as the top 1%. That's fantastic, right? I like that. What I'm asking for is evidence that growth is from a direct result of Trump's tax cuts.
Yeah.
And it wasn't caused by anything else.
My advice to you is to read the article.
Okay, sure, I'll read the article. And so this article will tell me.
That would be the evidence.
If I read this article, it's going to tell me that this growth by the bottom half of American households is only because of Trump's tax cuts. That's what it's going to tell me?
It's going to specifically outline the fact that Trump's economy, mainly due to tax cuts, is the reason why that statement is true. So it's not going to say only tax cuts, but like a big part of it is going to be the tax cuts.
Okay, so tax cuts aren't the only reason why they grew, right?
It's going to be the biggest part, but you can just ask for more evidence on this.
Sure, yeah. I think I got the picture.
But let's just say you read the article and say I'm right?
Sure.
Let's just grant that. Would you then say that tax cuts, unions, two-parent households are a better method of decreasing poverty than whatever 7 different methods of social security is?
Well,
it doesn't decrease like the other supplemental poverty measure. It decreases poverty as a whole, which you have like outlined is a much harder task than decreasing supplemental poverty.
If I read through that article and I saw that the only reason why American household wealth is growing is because of tax cuts,
I would never make that claim.
Oh, well,
I'd say a big part. All right.
You said a big part. Okay, so not the only part.
Yeah. No.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, what you're talking about is really a market mechanism, right? People who pay taxes are those who have jobs, right? So the problem with that is because the vast majority of those in poverty are non-workers, are people who don't pay any taxes at all. 49% of all Americans are non-workers, right? And that's not even talking about that, and that's only 1.1% of that.
Wait, to be clear, is there a difference between non-worker and unemployed?
Yep. Yeah, 49% of the entire American populations is non-workers. Only 1% of that includes people who are unemployed. Non-workers. So the unemployed, people who are unemployed are people who don't have a job, but who are actively looking for a job. Non-workers are people who just don't have jobs. So that includes children, retired people, disabled, the elderly, students, all of that, right? The problem is that poverty, these people are 300% times more likely to be poor. 300 times more likely to be poor than people who do work.
To be clear, that's a duh, right? If you're taking into account children and toddlers into your non-workers, of course they wouldn't have any money because they're toddlers. Tax cuts aren't meant to help non-workers. They're meant to help the unemployed because you're not trying to you're not trying to give money to kids.
So when we talk about ways to decrease poverty, I agree with exactly what you said. Tax cuts aren't for people who are non-workers. So we need something else to help those who do not work, right?
No.
So-
Wait. Do not work is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that statement. Let's separate out. I don't want to give money to specifically non-workers. I want to give money to unemployed people because non-workers include children.
Why?
I don't think toddlers should be. I don't think toddlers should be like.
So okay. So
Including
let me just make this really clear because I think this is kind of a point of confusion. It's not that those individual toddlers are in poverty; they don't have any money. They're in households who are in poverty, right?
Okay, but that 49% marker includes toddlers. So I'm curious on why you use that instead of the household. So if you said 49% of households are like non-workers and those people are poor, then that would be something. But your 49% includes toddlers, which is like, why wouldn't you just use the unemployment metric?
Because they're still affected by poverty, right? Just because they're toddlers doesn't mean that they're not affected by poverty.
But they're going to be poor by definition. Toddlers don't have, want, or need money. Why don't you use unemployment?
Well, they still need money just because they don't work.
No, toddlers, non-workers don't need money. Like
No,
toddlers
they do.
don't need money.
They do. Students need money. Children need money. The elderly need money.
Sure. Well, wait, sure. But the students who do need money, they look for a job. So you count those under unemployment. But toddlers who don't need money.
Are you a student? Are you
Yeah.
like in college or like?
Yeah, but I wouldn't expect tax cuts or unionizing workers to help me.
Right, but there should be something to help you, right?
You know that's not going to be welfare. Welfare doesn't target toddlers. Welfare doesn't target.
It does. What do you think that earned income tax increase is for? Like you just said, it gives people to have
It
that
gives
money
the
to have children.
parent, it gives the parents money, but those parents would also be counted as unemployed people. So my specific question to you is, what would Social Security help? That like targeting unemployed people wouldn't help.
Well, again, even if we had full employment, we would have 48% of the people, 48% of Americans would still not work, even if we had no unemployed people. And the fact remains that people who do not have jobs, non-workers, are 300 times more likely, 300 times like harder hit by poverty. It doesn't matter that they don't have they don't need money because everyone needs money, right?
Yeah. Well, wait. So you're saying non-workers are more likely to be poor, but if you're counting a toddler individually and not the household he lives in,
No.
a toddler is more likely to be poor. Specifically, I don't agree with the reframing of saying like non-workers and unemployers interchangeably. And Social Security just doesn't benefit.
I'm not saying it interchangeably. I'm making a very clear distinction that people who are unemployed are only 1% of people who are non-workers, right? So whenever I say non-workers, you can just think of, all right, 48% of all Americans do not have jobs. Because
that includes toddlers, that includes babies. I mean,
yes.
Who even knows if they count like I don't know, fetuses as like people? Like, I don't know, because some people
the problem they're talking about households, right? So a household
that's not what you said. That's not what you said. You didn't say 48% of non-worker households are poor, or like people who have a non-worker in the household are poor.
So let me just explain this more. Right. So toddlers need money. They do, right?
No, parents of the toddlers need money.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Excuse me. If the parents of the toddler had money, those toddlers wouldn't be considered poor. They wouldn't be considered impoverished.
But that would still be considered non-worker.
They would still be considered non-workers, but they wouldn't like be impoverished. They wouldn't be poor.
And the
even though they don't have the money themselves, they wouldn't be considered poor because they're a part of a household that isn't poor.
Yeah, but the parent would no. I would need to like verify that.
I can send you like a source if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. That says like non-workers. So if I'm a non-worker, if I'm a homeless guy, but I move in with a rich parent, I'm no longer considered poor.
Hold on. Sorry, what'd you say?
If I'm a non-worker and I'm like a homeless guy and I move in with like a rich family, I'm no longer considered poor.
Are you unemployed or are you just a non-worker?
Non-worker.
If you live with a rich family and you're just kind of like hanging out there, then no, you're not poor. You're a part of that family.
I'm unemployed and I'm that 1% who's an unemployed non-worker, but I move in with a rich family. I'm not considered.
Well, then it depends on if you are it depends on if you're a dependent or an independent based on like tax code. Whenever you file your taxes, if you're a dependent or an independent. If you're unemployed and you pay taxes, if you pay rent and you're a dependent, then yeah, you are impoverished. But if you are an independent, like if you're like a teenager who lives with their parents, who is unemployed, then yeah, you aren't impoverished because you live with a rich parent.
But my problem is those parents who are supplementing the non-workers would be considered unemployed. So why aren't you just trying to help unemployed people? So like, okay, my direct question to you, because we're running around in circles here. So maybe I'll say this and get to the next one. Why do non-workers like toddlers specifically need the money? And why wouldn't we just direct that to the parents who would be considered unemployed? And why wouldn't we just give them the money?
So when we talk about welfare policy that helps toddlers, what we're really talking about is sending money to those households to help those toddlers. Sending money.
Well, my bad. I don't want to, because I don't want you to answer a question that I didn't ask. So if you send the money to parents, then that would be considered helping the unemployed, not a non-worker.
No, it would be helping the parents. It doesn't matter if they're unemployed or not.
Okay.
Because the parents could be working. The parents could be working, and they still need money for their toddler.
Right, but you wouldn't be giving money to. Okay.
No one's talking about giving money directly to toddlers. If that's what you're asking.
I know, but then even if you give money to all the parents who need help with the toddlers, that number's still going to be 49%.
It is, but they're not going to be impoverished. That's the important part. It's not about reducing the number of people who are non-workers. It's about reducing the number of people who are non-workers in poverty.
Sure. Okay. I don't think we're going to find, I don't know, either we totally agree with each other and we're miscommunicating, or we're not going to find common ground.
Okay.
Specifically what I mean is saying that, like, so what does this relate to taxes? Why? You said because this doesn't affect non-workers, but it does.
Right. I don't know you.
Right. You specifically related this to poverty. You specifically related to the taxes because you're saying non-workers usually don't pay taxes. Because toddlers usually don't pay taxes. But the households who do support the non-workers do pay taxes. So my question to you is, how does this affect taxes again?
How does this affect like welfare and stuff?
No, taxes. I specifically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my contention is taxes are a better way to decrease poverty. You specifically said non-workers don't pay taxes.
So
non-workers toddlers don't pay taxes, but the households that do support toddlers, they do pay taxes.
Yeah. So when we talk about households, and you're saying tax cuts help like low-income households, which they might, those tax cuts don't like take into account the like family of the people, right, and how many dependents that they have. So we need a program that does take that into account, and that's welfare.
But that program, so even if it's targeted, what you're saying, it's targeted, so it's better. I disagree with that framing. I don't think just because it's a targeted aid doesn't mean it's better aid.
Right, but in this case, it's targeted like and doing it what it's supposed to do, right? It gives more money to people who have more kids.
Yep, but just because you're doing what you're supposed to do doesn't mean a non-targeted program couldn't do that better. And also, taxes are targeted.
It doesn't mean that a non-targeted program couldn't do it better. There's just no evidence that it would do it better unless you have some to provide.
Yeah, I just did. But also, taxes are targeted.
They are targeted, but I don't.
Okay. So what
you provided did not. Let me hold on.
Wait, you said, yeah, specifically, I can rewind this conversation. I brought up taxes, you brought up non-employment workers, but then you specifically said welfare is targeted and it does its job. But that doesn't disprove the fact that taxes are targeted and taxes also do their job.
Sure. So you have to. So when we talk about the earned income tax credit, which is what we talk about a lot when we talk about like non-workers, like and support for families who are living with non-workers, like children. Are you saying that taxes are going to do more than the EITC, which is going to cut child poverty in half, which is going to reduce the number of people in poverty by 16 million, which is going to like reduce poverty?
Those are predictions. Those are predictions.
No, the American Family Plan has passed. The American Rescue Plan has passed.
Okay, those are predictions.
Those are projections.
Yeah, those are predictions on how it's going to turn out.
Projections. They're different.
Okay, but those are still future projections.
I mean, maybe that could be completely wrong. Maybe the ITC actually increases
we've
poverty.
already had evidence of the past that we've already had, rather than future projections.
I mean, we've already had evidence that welfare works in the past, right? I could say the same thing about welfare.
Good. I already conceded that welfare could decrease poverty, but I'd say other methods are better at decreasing poverty. So you keep going back to, oh, welfare's already decreased poverty. Sure, but there are other methods that do it better and much more effectively.
Can you show me like a statistic that proves that tax cuts decrease poverty more than welfare?
I can only give you evidence that, well, because we haven't spent $10 trillion of taxes. I can say the taxes we have now are effective, but also doesn't come with the downsides of Social Security, which include the high rate of single-parent households, which include the link to biopolitics. Like, these are the things that taxes, unions, and encouraging a two-parent household do that Social Security doesn't. So when you say that $1 trillion or that $1 trillion every year can only go to Social Security, and that's the best way to do it, I'm not convinced, because there are 3 other mechanisms.
I know that you're not convinced, but you haven't provided me with any other reason to believe otherwise. You haven't provided me with statistics that show that taxes are more effective than poverty. You haven't provided me with the statistics that $1 trillion would be better spent on cutting taxes.
Yeah,
you provided me with the statistics.
Multiple. I said that even if it decreases poverty, my contention isn't that taxes would do the same thing that Social Security does, but I'd say taxes decrease poverty at a good enough rate that not encouraging a single parent household and not heavily implying biopolitics. These are 2 things that taxes avoid that Social Security doesn't.
So first of all, what you provided me does not prove that taxes decrease poverty. They prove that cutting taxes somehow increases the bottom half of America's households. So even if that is true, that doesn't prove what you're saying it proves.
It increases the wealth of
poor. It increases the wealth. It does not. That statistic does not show that it decreases poverty. It might decrease poverty, but you haven't shown me that. That's what I'm asking for.
Wait, how do you decrease poverty other than giving wealth to poor people?
The bottom half of all Americans is not just people in poverty.
I know.
It could be middle class people too, right?
It could.
And we're talking specifically about.
Wait, they specifically said bottom half. They didn't specifically say middle class. So I am assuming, and this might be bold of me, that they're saying all of the bottom class.
Well, if you remember the blue line, 15% of Americans are in poverty. So that includes 35% of Americans who aren't in poverty. Your statistic does, right? So what we're talking about when we're talking about decreasing poverty, your statistic about cutting taxes increases the growth rate of the bottom 50% of American households. Doesn't say anything about taxes. It says it is only talking about the rate at which those American households are growing in wealth, right? So when you say that taxes are more effective at that, cutting poverty, I need a statistic for that. I need you to prove
other than increasing poor people's wealth. Can you answer that question?
That's what welfare does. Yeah, I agree with that.
Wait, no. How do you increase poverty other than increasing poor people's wealth?
There is no other way. That's what poverty. That's what welfare for.
So,
Cutting taxes does not increase their wealth.
Wait, so when people increase their wealth, you're decreasing poverty by that mechanism.
If those households are in poverty and their wealth is increasing, then yeah, poverty goes down.
Okay, it's at bottom 50%. It means all of the bottom 50%. If they just meant middle class, then they would say middle class.
I know. What I'm asking for is that a statistic that proves that cutting taxes reduces poverty more than welfare. That's all I'm asking for.
More? I already said that I couldn't give you evidence over a 50-year period that $10 trillion of taxes cuts poor people's wealth. But that's why I don't only advocate for taxes. I advocate for unions and the two-parent structure more. And also, I can give you evidence that a two-parent household is the lead indicator of crime and poverty. Do you want me to give you that?
That's not really relevant to talking about taxes and welfare necessarily.
No,
but again,
my only solution isn't taxes. It's a 3-pronged solution. You take any of these as independent, and they're going to fail. Of course.
I understand what your solution is. I'm just saying you haven't provided me any data or like proof that they would work.
I
This
just
is
asked
all
you
just
for data. Wait, I asked you if I could provide you for data, and you said that's not necessary. So can I provide you the data that two-parent households are the lead indicator of crime in poverty?
Please, yes.
Okay.
You can provide me with data that two-parent households are a lead indicator of crime and poverty.
I mean, my bad. Single-parent household is the lead indicator of crime and poverty.
Sure. You can do that if you want, but again, that doesn't prove that it would decrease poverty more than welfare, which is that's all I'm asking for. It doesn't have to be this like.
If it's the lead indicator, what does that mean to you?
It's corollary. It's not causary.
What?
If you correlates.
Look at a socioeconomic status by race and class, and you see that two-parent households do far greater than single-parent households in every metric, and you come to the conclusion that the lead indicator of crime and poverty is a two-parent household, that is not correlation?
That's what I said. It's correlation. It's not causation.
How is that not? Wait.
For example, if someone in deep poverty gets married, are they all of a sudden out of poverty?
No.
Then no, it's not causal. It's corollary.
No, I'm saying if two parents and they do get married and they do have a baby, that baby will be far better than if they weren't married.
That's a different claim than you were making before, but okay. All I'm saying
that's the
is
exact claim I was making. Two-parent households is a single lead indicator for crime and poverty.
Sure, but that has nothing to do with what you said, which is how well the baby is going to be off.
Okay, when I said lead indicator for crime and poverty, I'm saying that for the kid growing up.
I'm not going to disagree with you on this. Two-parent households are important.
Okay. Well, wait. Would you consider that as data? Because you keep saying I don't provide data for anything. That's like hardcore evidence right there.
My problem is that you're not providing. My problem is that you're not providing data. My problem is that you're not providing data that refutes my claim that welfare is the most effective way to lower poverty. That's all I want.
Again, I'm not going to disagree with you or agree with that claim. What I'm going to say is it's not outweighing the negatives of one, biopolitics, and two, the increase of single-parent households. So you can have that claim, but just that claim does not win you the debate, because I could kill all poor people and then there will be no poverty. So when we look at these things, we have to look at a bi-dimensional analysis of how much poverty is being decreased, how much debt is being increased in the United States, how many people are being in single poverty households, and what else could we do with that money? So it's not a single dimension analysis, it's a multi-dimensional analysis.
Okay, but do you agree that you can't prove that would be more effective than welfare, I mean?
Right now, I do not have the data to suggest.
Okay, so you can't prove it.
That taxes would be a better way.
This is all just kind of like speculation?
No, I never made the claim that this decreases poverty more than Social Security. All I'm saying is we have to look at a unilateral or a cross-sectional analysis of poverty. What else could we do with the money? Single-parent households. There's more things to consider than just poverty.
If you agree that these things don't decrease poverty as much as welfare, then what's the point?
Fox, I'm going to say this again. Poverty isn't the only thing we're measuring. We could take a machine gun and kill all poor people. That decreased poverty more than Social Security. We look at other things too. Single-parent household, biopolitics, dependent government.
Oh, I think I understand where the misunderstanding is. Do you have like data that shows that single-parent households are more likely when people are like receive welfare, and that single-parent households are a direct result from welfare?
Yes.
Great.
It's specifically, the first link I posted. I'm sorry that's not a link. I'm trying to give you a link on that. It does appear right on me, but it was the first link that I've ever posted.
The Reuters link?
Meripedia, I think.
You have
specifically, the war on poverty increased the effectiveness of single-parent households, because what they did was they gave you earned income tax credit based on your single-parent status and how many kids you had, making people more independent and married to the government rather than married to their spouse.
So what does this data tell me? Does this data tell me that welfare is directly results in more single-parent households?
Yes. The first
Yep.
point on there is government dependence, long-term effects on children. Yes, this is specifically talking about the war on poverty's effect on single-parent household.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I have a National Bureau of Economic Research, and it shows that there is no causal link between welfare and single-parent households. There is a causal link between migration between states from people who are already more likely to be a single mother, but there is no causal link between welfare and single mothers.
I would like to see that data.
Sure, I linked it in chat.
Okay. So
here, and then here's just a quote from the abstract. There is no evidence that welfare contributes to increasing propensities for female-headed households for either whites or blacks. And by female-headed households, they mean single mothers.
no evidence for welfare contributes to increase. Why would it specifically outline female-headed households?
Because we're talking about single mothers, right?
Single-parent households.
If there's a single mother, then there's a single father, right? They can't coexist without one another.
Wait, what if I'm not trying to get hung up on semantics here, but not all single-parent households are mothers.
They're not, but if we look at the number of single mothers, that reflects the number of single fathers, right? They should be identical numbers.
Wait, can you explain?
I don't know how else to explain it. When we look at single mothers, is that not a single parent? And if there is an increase in single mothers, that's going to correlate with an increase and actually cause an increase in single fathers, right? Do you not agree with that?
Okay, all right. My thing about this is, when was this published?
Well, let's see.
1995.
Let's see. Yeah, 1997.
Okay. So let's kind of table this. My main contention on here is, I think my evidence is more recent, over 3 decades more recent. But I guess you would argue that your evidence is better because it comes from a more well-read source. But
yeah, the national. Well, I understand where you're coming from. At first, this was a very common idea that welfare increased the propensity of single-parent households, right? But the more it was looked into, the more it was found that it doesn't cause single-parent households, but it does correlate with mothers who were already more likely to be a single mother.
No, I disagree. I think it's the opposite. I think the more we research into it, because it's from 1995, the more research we went into it, the more data suggests that single-parent poverty is due to government dependence, because mine's more recent. And
okay, but I mean, we can just throw studies at each other, I guess.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think
my thing isn't just to increase single-parent households. My thing is to increase single-parent households, unions, and increasing immigration. But you had something on that. It says it's not correlative to single-parent households, but what'd you say? It's correlative to what?
It's correlative to single mothers who were already more likely to be a single mother. So we don't know that these single-parent households are resulting because of welfare or because of other factors that make them more likely to be single parents otherwise.
Sure. Okay. So back before the war on poverty, the single-parent household in the United States was, for Black people specifically, was I heard it was higher or lower than white people. So Black people were more likely to be in the 2-parent households. After the war on poverty, single-parent households increased to about 75%. Why do you think that is?
So even if you said you heard that, so even if I grant you that's true.
I can give you the study.
Sure. So even if that is true, just because it correlates with the war on poverty does not mean it's caused because of welfare, right?
Sure. I didn't say that. I asked you a question. What do you think happened?
It could be any number of reasons. But
sure.
what you're asserting,
ask me a question. I asked you so you can answer the question. What do you think happened?
I don't know. But what you're asserting is because it happened because of welfare, and I need
No,
stats on
I
that.
didn't say that. No, I gave you a data, and I said this data says that there is a correlation to welfare and single-parent households. Now, this isn't the only. You know this, and I know you know this, and you know I know that you know this. That this is a common conservative talking point, and I have multiple data backing up my statistic of that there is a correlation factor between single-parent households and welfare. More importantly, government dependence. But this is not the only thing I'm advocating for. I'm also advocating for unions. I'm also advocating for a decrease in taxes. And I'm also advocating for immigration holding facilities because immigration is also causally linked and correlative to the increase in wealth among poor people. So none of these factors are independent. These are
Sure.
independent.
Can you tell me why I should care that the war on poverty is correlated with a higher increase in single-parent households?
Because, as we already discussed and you already conceded, single-parent households is the greatest indicator for a child.
Yeah. But
crime
just
and
because
poverty.
it correlates with the war on
No,
poverty.
it's causal. It's causally linked. It's causally linked.
It's causally linked.
Pointing to you, but yeah, that matters because it's a greatest indicator for a child of crime and poverty. But again, none of these factors are independent. You have yet to grasp the concept of my solutions. So
No. So
let's pivot to a different.
Sure. So what's happening is that you're giving me a reason. You're giving me like some sort of strategy for why another program would work better than welfare, and then I'm criticizing that strategy.
I don't because I feel like I'm turning you off a lot.
No, I know what you're saying. It's not just that one. It's just there's multiple.
Yeah. Okay.
There's multiple.
All right. Yeah.
So then I criticize that one, and then I ask for data that it reduces poverty more than, or even at all, close to welfare, right? And then you're like, okay, well, no, there's multiple things. There's multiple things, right? So I can't really criticize any one of your three things because each time I criticize one, you'll be like, oh, well, wait, it's more things. It's three things in conjunction, right?
Yeah. Specifically, what happens is I do give you data, but all of these are in a bundle. These don't work independently. But more onto the problems. Let's sort of pivot a little here to biopolitics. This is more of a moral claim, but I don't think you should be able to. So K. Jelen, the person who founded politics, basically his moral claim is basically, and I agree with this, that you should be as little dependent for the government for your essential needs of life as possible. This is the theory of biopolitics because when the government gives you life, they can easily take it away. LBJ agrees with this because he says we're going to have these inward vote Democrats for hundreds of years because he knew if Black people got linked or hooked to the government, that they would need the government to sustain their life, which has exactly happened now today. So I cannot agree with welfare because it comes from a fundamentally racist system. Do you have any disagreement?
Sure. So welfare has existed far before Lyndon B. Johnson.
Right.
And I don't really care what some racist president said. That doesn't reflect the state of poverty in the modern world. And again, we keep on pivoting to these different three-pronged approaches because it's impossible for me to disprove that they don't like work better because you just keep on pivoting to each like three of them. But yeah, we can pivot to biotech we can pivot to biopolitics if you would like. I don't think proponents of biopolitics would disagree that the government should at least provide the bare basic minimum for those to survive who can't like provide for themselves, right?
Right. So what they would say is as little as possible should the government be able to dictate life or death, because when they can dictate life, they can also dictate death.
Sure. So when we talk about like as little as possible, do you think, so you already think that Medicaid is okay, right?
Right.
Do you think that Social Security is okay?
Specifically Social Security, I haven't looked into that as much.
Sure. So when we talk about biopolitics, I'm sure most biopoliticians, I guess, would support things like Social Security, because how else would the retired, would the elderly, would the disabled live when they can't work or should not work, right?
Yeah.
So their life is, so in that way, their life is entirely dependent on the government, but
And
it's
they
still
say
like,
that's bad. But the thing is, they couldn't help it, right? They would say, like, anything that you fundamentally rely on for giving you life, it could also be capable of giving you death. For elderly people, they specifically have no choice. They have to do it, or they straight up die. But for other people, we look more on independent solutions because they don't have to straight up die. They can be more independent. Me advocating for unions, doing, the pull yourself up by your bootstraps meme. They can be more independent. They're allowed that freedom. Elderly people aren't.
yeah, they're not. But like we said, when we go back to the percentage of non-workers, only 1% of those are those who are unemployed. So only 1% of those who are actually looking for work who can work, right? So even if there was full unemployment, there was full employment, there would still be massive swaths of the population who cannot work to no fault of their own, who still need assistance, right?
No, that's not what that proves.
Why not?
Toddlers don't need assistance from the government. They need assistance from their parents. If you include
They
all
need assistance
non-workers,
from
you
their parents,
include
but what
basic-
can the parents do if they can't afford care for their children, even if they're both working full time?
going
What can
back
they do?
to my solution, they'd advocate for the unions. So have that healthcare be dependent on the union. They'd have their pay be dependent on the union, and they would have
No,
marriage.
I'm not talking about healthcare specifically. I'm just talking basic stuff. Like they can't afford to send their kids to school. They can't afford clothes for them,
That's
food,
unions.
and
Unions advocate for wages. The government
for higher
doesn't.
wages, right?
Yeah.
So what if the parents work in a service industry and there's no unionization, or they work at McDonald's? They both work at McDonald's and they can't there's no unions at McDonald's.
I want unions in as many places as we can get it.
Do you think the parents who can't afford clothes and necessities for their children care
I'm
about that?
not
They
going to disagree
need
with
money.
you.
They can't afford to wait around for unions.
I'm not going to disagree with you that there are a portion of middle-aged household or middle-aged single parents that need government intervention. My contention
Right.
is that government intervention should be as little as possible. Let me be clear. I'm not advocating for the abolishment of welfare. I'm advocating for the divestment of welfare. Divestment
Okay.
into other pronged solutions that do better.
I see. I was just curious because on your interview you said you thought that welfare wasn't a good idea, but so you do think welfare should exist then, right?
I think Medicaid specifically should exist,
Well,
but
and
other
Social Security.
welfares should be divested from. It's going to be dangerous to completely abolish welfare all in one go and leave people with fuck all nothing. But what I advocate for is a divestment from welfare to other systems so people get less reliant on the government and more reliant on their people.
What would that help? What positive results come with people relying less on the government?
Specifically, yep. Okay, so one, relying less on the government leads you less to, biopolitics, but we can discuss that theory later. The specific solutions I advocate for, unions have shown an increase of worker happiness, worker wages, decrease worker manipulation.
Sure. I don't disagree with you. I like unions. Unions aren't mutually exclusive with
No,
welfare.
yeah, I knew you were going to bring up that point. But specifically, when you advocate for more solutions than one, you get no solutions.
Hold on. Do you think that the government funds unions?
I don't care.
I think it probably matters, right? If you're talking about divesting money from welfare and putting it towards unions, it probably matters if the government funds unions, right?
Well, if they do, they're doing a sucky job at it because I don't see
Well, they
them.
don't. They only fund unions for teachers and policemen and firefighters and government jobs that are already highly unionized. The vast majority of people who are not unionized work in the private sector. Those aren't funded by the government.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So should we just nationalize the service industry and the manufacturing industry?
What are you asking?
So when you talk about divesting money from welfare to put it towards unions, the problem is that unions aren't funded by the government. They're funded by private firms.
And they should be funded by the government.
So every single service or industry should be nationalized.
I didn't say every single service or industry. I'm saying as much as possible.
So you want to nationalize the service industry, You want to nationalize like the manufacturing industry?
Specific industry by industry contentions, I'm not going to disagree with you on. I'm specifically trying to unionize the most we could. If a union is negative, like the policemen have been shown to unionize and have negative benefits, then I would be in favor of the disarmament of that union. I'm not saying 100% unions. I'm saying unions when unions are possible.
Yeah, unions can exist outside of the government. Like unions can exist in firms that aren't nationalized.
They're not existing outside of the government. One, because minimum wage has already taken place over unions. And two, no one gives a shit about unions. I think government should be in there so they can encourage unions.
Government can encourage unions, but at the end of the day, it's down to firms. It's up to firms, the private firms.
You just contradicted yourself. You just said the strongest unions have been funded by the government.
Yeah, and those unions already exist. Every single person who works in a government job already is in a union. So funding those unions more wouldn't really do much. They already are.
You just said all the unions that are strong right now were funded by the government. So that just coincides with my conclusion that government funding for a particular union or unions in general is an effective measure. What are you disagreeing with?
I'm saying that if you want to remove funding from welfare to fund it towards unions, the vast majority of people who aren't unionized work in private firms and can't be helped. They can't be helped by that. The government cannot fund unions in private firms. But the government cannot fund unions at a McDonald's.
Right, but they can fund public unions.
Public unions already exist. They're already extremely saturated. There's not a teacher.
You advocated for two forms of public unions, teachers and police officers. That does not mean every union, every public institution has a union.
I don't know. Maybe you can find me a single public institution that does not have a. I don't know. But the vast majority of people who work in public jobs are unionized, right? So the focus towards union should be more towards.
Can you provide the data for that?
I don't know, man. Do you think that police unions don't exist? Teacher unions don't exist?
You've given me the same two examples every single time. And if it
the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, firefighters?
Wait,
what? You want me to go on? I don't understand. What? This is very common.
Right. If it's already the case, well, we're not gonna agree on this. And since you have no data, I'm not gonna believe you when you state that every single union, every single public union that can exist already does exist. I don't believe.
No, I never said that. I'm saying if you want to take money from welfare and then to start unionizing people, that's not going to solve your problem. Because most people who aren't unionized work in a private sector.
But wait, firstly, that's not going to solve my problem in and of itself. You can say
your three-pronged solution. Right.
So I'm just trying to help the problem. I'm not trying to solve poverty. I'm trying to help lower the poverty line.
Yeah, so is welfare.
Okay, unions, I've not been given any data that suggests that not even most public places are already unionized. I've not been given any data of that. If that is the case, I'll look into that and edit my prong solutions. But my knowledge of this is that there are a lot of places where unions can be implemented, but one, it's been replaced by what's it called? It's replaced by minimum wage, and also they're just not unionized because they don't have the power to unionize. What I want is every single place that can be unionized. And you've already said that not every single public institution is unionized. So I don't know what we're disagreeing about.
I feel like you just have an idea that if the government just puts all of its funding towards unions, all of a sudden every single McDonald's worker will be unionized.
It doesn't put all of its money on unionized. That's why the three-pronged solution is so effective.
Do you know what industries would be unionized as a result of more public funding?
I don't know the specific industry to industry, but I know.
Don't you think that's kind of important to know if you're trying to decrease policy with the?
I don't think I don't think that I'd need to know every single public industry that needs to be unionized,
Well, what
don't
if there's like three industries? What if there's like three public industries left that haven't been unionized, and they all like have very low rates of poverty? Obviously, unionizing them wouldn't help poverty very much, right?
if I've been given the data that unionization in America isn't the problem, then unionization would not be one of my solutions.
Unionization in America, unionization is America. It is a problem, but it's not a public sector problem. It's a private sector problem, and the private sector problem isn't solved by more public funding.
If I had been given the data that the United States government couldn't do anything about unions, and that all public institutions that could be unionized have been unionized, then unions wouldn't be one of my pronged solutions. You have not been given the data to be as confident with your claims as you've already been. When you say that all public unions that have been that could be unionized are unionized, you have not shown the data for that. So it will still remain one of my pronged solutions.
Okay, I encourage you. I encourage you to look up the percentage of public sector people who are unionized.
And I encourage you to do the same. But I encourage you to do the same. But as for my other two, if this one doesn't work, the other two are not finite in their funding. They're infinite in their funding. You can infinitely fund the immigration facilities, so you can increase the number of immigrants coming from other places to increase the wages of the bottom half of America. And you can infinitely fund decreasing in taxes, because tax cuts by itself doesn't do anything. That's called deficit spending. There needs to be some sort of government backing for that decrease in taxes to be effective. So those other two solutions are infinite, not finite in spending.
Sure. So is like welfare. Though welfare is pretty infinite in spending, but also I think it's just really. I think it's just really
other problems.
I think it's just really important to understand how the numbers would actually work out on these three specific policies. For example, if you cut taxes, what if that's not enough to fund the immigration stuff, or not enough to fund the unions, right?
Sure, that's
I
why
just think it's very important to.
I have two infinite solutions, infinitely spawning, if those two aren't enough. But also, I have data upon data to back up my solutions, and that don't have the problem that comes with your solution. Your solution is social safety net, or not social safety nets. Your solution is welfare. That's a one-pronged solution that looks at one metric to see if it's effective or not. Poverty. That's the only metric to see if it's effective or not. My solution looks at a myriad of other problems and tries to solve those. You have not convinced me that the problem of poverty outsides or subsidies the problems of welfare.
Sure. Okay. I don't think we're going to agree, because you have a three-pronged solution that you can pivot to at any point that you want to kind of avoid criticism, and just kind of like assume that one of them is going to offset another one, and it's all going to work out okay. I don't think we're going to agree on much here, but yes.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of questions before we get into the Q&A.
Sure.
Do you think, so single-parent households, do you think that they're important to encourage the two-parent structure? Do you think that's important?
Maybe.
Okay. Do you think it's important to encourage public unions, if there's public unions to be encouraged?
Yeah, I like unions.
Do you think that it's important to open immigration facilities so we don't have to throw kids in cages?
Yep, I like open borders.
Do you think that taxes that don't deficit spend increase the income of bottom half of America?
Not quite convinced on that one yet.
No.
My problem is with two of those, at least two of those prongs, right? The unions and the immigration, those aren't mutually exclusive with welfare, right?
Yes, they are. Because if the government has a finite amount of money, if you spend $1 trillion on welfare, then that's $1 trillion that you could have spent on unions.
No, the economy is not a zero-sum game. There's discretionary spending, right? Can you prove to me that we can't fund unions, welfare, and immigration at the same time?
You can. And in that sense, you are right that we could do all of these solutions.
I mean, like you said, there's deficit spending.
I'd rather take that money that we could do on deficit spending and spend it more on these solutions, because I think these are more effective. You're saying that we could do all of everything. Cool, but that won't be as effective as
Why not?
trillion because one, we can't infinitely spend, and even if we could infinitely spend, I'd rather infinitely spend it on my prong solutions than welfare because of the problems I've outlined with welfare.
So why can't we just like increase taxes a little bit on the like top tax brackets to fund unions and immigration?
Sure, we could increase those taxes and spend it on my solutions, but I'd also still advocate for the divestment of welfare to also spend on these solutions. These
Why not?
solutions have
Why welfare specifically? Why not? Why not like the defense budget? Why not increase taxes? Why not
Sure.
any?
Again, you can do those, but my solutions are infinitely spending. So yes, you can have this subsection of money and cut up the military budget to fund unions, and you can have this subsection of money and cut it up to fund unions or fund like immigration spending. What I'd say is, okay, cool. I'd still advocate for the divestment of welfare. None of this is like coinciding. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, but my problem is that you're suggesting those three things as a replacement to welfare, as if welfare can't welfare can't exist with those things being prominent, right? But it can.
welfare has its own subset of problems, and I think that money we spent on welfare could be spent on it. So I guess I think you understand what I'm saying.
I
So I'm
understand what you're
asking
saying.
this
I just
question.
don't think it has to come at the cost of divestment from welfare, which has proven to be an extremely useful tool at reducing poverty.
Yes, but that's one metric of welfare. Okay.
I don't know what you mean.
Okay. So my question to you, and maybe if you answer this question, then you understand what I'm saying. Can we use the money on welfare for my three-pronged solution?
We could, but it doesn't have to come
Okay.
from welfare.
It doesn't have to. You already outlined
And
that.
it shouldn't come from welfare.
I think it should because welfare has its own subset of problems. And the money we already spent.
Can you prove to me that the number of single parent households would decrease if we slashed spending on welfare?
I just proved to you a correlative factor. It's not negative correlation, but
Okay, so you can't. So you can't. So, again, my problem with this is it's all speculation, right? You're just kind of like slashing. You're just kind of like slashing welfare spending and just hoping for the best.
Wait,
and that's what Reagan. That's what Reagan did in the 1980s. When Reagan slashed. What?
Fox, one of my solutions is encouraging the two-parent household structures. I'm not saying getting rid of welfare will do it on its own. I'm saying we should.
No. You're hoping for the best. You're cutting welfare spending and then just hoping that your three-pronged solution, which can exist while coinciding with your solutions, by the way, and just hoping that those will cover the negative effects that comes with slashing welfare.
Fox, my solution to two-parent households isn't to cut welfare. I'm not saying cutting welfare will increase two-parent households.
It involves it, right?
I'm saying that could be the case.
Well, that's what you're arguing for, isn't it?
No, I'm saying two-parent.
So you're not arguing for cutting welfare?
I'm arguing for that, but I'm not saying it's going to have the positive of completely encouraging two-parent household structures. That's a solution I talked about independently on my opening statement.
Okay. So how are we going to increase the two-parent household?
Sure. We can do the opposite of what welfare does. And
take away money from people?
What'd you say?
So are we going to take away money from people?
No, I'm not saying divorce has to be like an expensive thing. I'm saying we should just socially encourage the two-parent household structures, whether that comes from government spending to ensure two-parent families are, two-parent families are.
We already do that. There are already loads of tax benefits. There are already loads of tax benefits for people who are married.
But the tax benefits of single-parent households outweighs that. And especially if you're widowed, the tax benefits of being single parent or being widowed and having an increased amount of children outweigh the tax benefits of being married.
Do you have data for that? Do you have data that the tax benefits specifically that the tax benefits of being a single mother outweigh the tax benefits of being married?
At the tax benefits of being a single mother, do you know what the one poverty is?
The tax benefits of being a single parent outweigh the tax benefits of being married.
Do you know what the war on poverty is?
I believe so.
Okay. If you knew what the war on poverty is, then you can see one of the first things that it says is that
I can't.
parent households.
You have to show me that people are choosing to be single mothers so they can get the tax benefits.
Sure, I can bring you that evidence, but I thought this was okay. I'll bring it.
No. You brought up the evidence that there has been an increase in single mothers, not that they chose to be single mothers because of the tax benefits or something.
No, wait, hold up. We're going back to step 2. I already gave data that the war on poverty was correlative to the increase of single parent households, and you have not given me a counter solution to why single parent households in the Black community and the white community.
That's not exactly. That's what I'm saying. Is that you have to show me that that the results that there have been an increase in single parent households because of the war on poverty.
I showed you that. Look at
no, you didn't. You showed me a correlation.
No, it says it's causatively linked.
How is it causing people? How is it causing people to be single parent households?
When you encourage people through tax benefits and other benefits to be a single parent, then of course there will be more single parents. That's what I said to you in the third link. That's my third link, Fox.
What tax benefits are there to being a single parent, and which of those are not justified?
I didn't. What? Justified?
Yeah.
I don't think it's just.
I mean, obviously, some single parents should receive aid, right? Because they're the only parent in the house.
I don't think it's justified if it doesn't work. I don't care if it's justified.
Yeah, but welfare has reduced poverty, so I think it does work.
Again, Fox, I think we're running in circles. So Brittany or Todd might want to.
We are very much running in circles.
These are
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
There are multiple lines of how to solve a problem. Poverty is one problem in the United States.
That's what we're talking about. That's what this entire conversation is about.
No.
Poverty and welfare.
No.
Yes.
This entire conversation.
Look at the title of the YouTube stream.
Fox.
I don't know if you walked into the wrong debate, but this is a debate about welfare and poverty.
Fox.
I'm listening.
Welfare solves one problem.
The problem of this discussion.
Fox. If we take a machine gun and kill all poor people, that would be a solvency of poverty too. We have to look at multiple problems and multiple ways of solving it. When I was rattling off the problems that unions solved, you cut me off. When I was rattling off the ways of the solutions that two-parent households solved, you cut me off. I could rattle the ways of which
I already agree with you on those.
I can rattle the ways of the solutions of immigration, but I'm going to be afraid that you're going to cut me off.
Well, I am, because there's no reason for you to say that. I already agree with you on that.
Even if poverty is the main problem that we're talking about, it's only one problem. There's multiple problems with welfare, okay? Poverty isn't the only thing or the only thing that we need to be talking about. There are multiple problems in the United States, and I think my three-pronged solution solves multiple problems on multiple axes while avoiding the problem that welfare poses.
Okay, let's just calm down. Brittany, can you please read me the title of the YouTube stream?
Welfare. Just welfare.
It doesn't even say poverty. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, it says welfare. And how do we measure the success of welfare?
I don't care. You lied. You said it said poverty, but it didn't.
What? No, I said we're talking about welfare. And how do we measure this?
You said the title of the video. The title of the video had welfare and poverty.
Gutsleaf, do you agree that this conversation is about welfare?
Yes.
How do we measure the success of welfare?
We have to do a cost-benefit analysis. We have to see the cost of welfare. We have to see the benefit it does to the American people.
Exactly. And what is the benefit?
I'd argue that there could be multiple benefits of welfare. One benefit of welfare is Medicaid that saves
No. What does Medicaid do? Like, what do these policies do? I know what they are, but what do they do?
Saves the lives of poor people who are on the edge of distress and need health care. That's what Medicaid does. The other 6 strands of welfare tries to, 1, solve child poverty, and 2, solves poverty in and of itself. Also, there are other benefits that welfare tries to solve. Income tax credit is trying to dictate the way of people live their lives and tries to help people with food, with shelter, with water. Poverty isn't the only thing we're talking about, because we wouldn't be talking about Medicaid then.
Okay, so just to be clear, people can walk into a hospital and get a treatment, any treatment they want, even if they're super poor, right? Medicaid doesn't give poor people the ability to get medical treatment. It gives the ability to not be pushed into poverty because of medical treatment, right? Just be more specific. So I don't disagree with you, right? These are all aspects of welfare, and all of these aspects of welfare aim to solve one thing: poverty. Aim to reduce poverty.
Fox, if I bring up, so say welfare completely solved poverty, but it came at the expense, at everyone's expense, and say what happens? Everyone's homeless now. Is that a misnomer or a red herring to bring up that this policy makes people homeless because we're talking about poverty? That's
ignoring
true.
ignoring the fact that, I mean, people being in poverty and people being homeless is kind of contradictory. Of course not. Of course it wouldn't be worth it, right?
Okay.
If welfare resulted in like a bunch of like people dying or whatever, then yeah, obviously it's not worth it.
Okay, thank you. So we're not only talking about poverty, we're talking about welfare, the benefits, the cost of welfare,
Of course.
the replacement of welfare, the other solutions of welfare, everything, which includes a multi-dimensional analysis of welfare. That
But let's be
doesn't
clear.
only include poverty. I agree with you when you say poverty is the main thing welfare solves, and I conceded that at the first minute mark of the debate. Now we're talking about the other problems of poverty.
But let's be clear, and this is the problem that I've had ever since that 1 minute mark, okay? If in the example, welfare somehow involves everyone being homeless, right? That's the outcome. You then have to prove to me that that occurred because of welfare, not correlated with welfare, not coincidentally, but because of welfare.
Okay, I'm gonna encourage you to read the study that I showed you. It's causally and correlatively linked.
Okay.
Now you have not given me any other reason why the single parent poverty shot up in the time of the war on poverty.
I don't have to prove to you that there was another reason. You have to prove to me that was because of why.
I agree with you. You don't have to prove it, but it just goes as more evidence of my conclusion. If you can't say if you can't,
the burden of proof is literally on you.
I know, and that's true, That's true. I did post a source, and I did post data to support my conclusion. It's just weird to me that we have this increase, this shot up of single parent poverty, and you can't come with anything. I'm not saying you don't have to come up with anything. You can just say, I don't know. I'm just saying
I can't really come up with anything because there's nothing to really respond to.
Well, that's
Sure.
Just showing me a correlation between.
Sure, but I posted the data site, so it's not.
You posted the data. You
It's
posted the data, and
positive.
I suppose that I could read through it while we just sit here and read through it. But I mean, it surely does look like it's just correlates with the war on poverty and single parent households.
Positively linked, and we've been over this, and I've told you how it's.
Okay. If it's positively linked, why? Why is it positively linked?
Because when you encourage people through tax income, through other through tax benefits and money benefits to be a single parent, of course there's going to be more single parents.
Okay. Remember, we were already here.
I feel like you guys are going in circles.
Yeah, we're going in circles. Let's go to the Q&A.
Yeah, let's go to the Q&A, and then you guys can give your final thoughts. All right, so let's just pull up this one. This is right here from Young Werther's original. Says, is it really possible to be homeless but not impoverished? Seems like having a home is sort of part of not being in poverty.
I don't think anyone disagrees with that.
Okay.
I guess it's theoretically possible. Say you just won the lottery as a homeless person. You're technically not in poverty. You're homeless.
Okay. All right. So from Unrelated Coma, he said, so is this guy advocating for UBI because then people literally will start having kids just to take their UBI checks?
I would encourage people to look up the data on people having kids just to receive the tax benefits, because there has been no causal link shown in that. But no, I don't advocate for UBI.
There has been a causal link, and I can post it in chat if you guys want.
I would love to read your corollary link.
Yeah, well, I feel like maybe this would have been a good one where we did swaps studies and all that before the debate, because that's something we are working to do. Actually, is a lot of these debates that are going to be really study oriented. We're going to have people swap studies, and then they'll be able to actually address them during the debate. So yeah, next just for future debates that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah. All right. So the next question was from Andrew B. Oh wait, did I do this one? No. Is welfare like the EIC and SNAP a subsidy for business? Business can provide a lower wage so that their employees can qualify for welfare.
No, the EITC and SNAP doesn't apply to businesses or anything like that.
Okay. And next question is, what are both of your thoughts on corporate welfare? So, Cutsleep, why don't you go first?
Sure. Corporate taxes have been shown when they're lowered that it's actually an increase of 1, business transactions, and 2, worker wages. This is why in the Norwegian countries, Sweden, Finland, Germany, Norway, I said Norway twice, but these countries that you guys propose that are godlike, they have really low corporate tax rates too. Actually, the lowest corporate tax rates in the countries, in all countries, most of them are Norwegian. And they have shown to, 1, free up the economic status that happened in the Norwegian countries, higher wages, and more business transactions. So I'm in favor of the lowering of corporate tax wages.
I think the question was more about corporate welfare, I think, which is just like kind of the idea that corporations shouldn't have to pay very much taxes. Obviously, I'm pretty against that and for a lot of redistributive tax policies.
Wait, was it about corporate welfare or corporate taxes?
I thought it was welfare.
Corporate welfare.
Oh, yeah, then discount my answer. Corporate taxes and corporate welfare are 2 distinct things. I've not read much on corporate welfare.
Okay. Todd, did you have a couple questions?
Yeah, I want to know what you think that the Rona outbreak will have on the future of the welfare state. And the question's for both of you guys.
Well, we've already seen that it's resulted in an increase in the earned income tax credit, which I think is going to be pretty good, again, with the projections of it cutting child poverty in half. And then also maybe normalizing things like stimulus a little bit more. But yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to say what direction we're going to be in, what direction the economy is going to go in. Don't know if like the bird flu thing is going to be like another coronavirus. But yeah, I think it's resulted in the increase of the welfare state, and I obviously think that I obviously don't object to that. So
sure, I think coronavirus is going to leave more people dependent on the government. So we're going to fall into biopolitics more until the corporations, the establishments, and the governments control all of our lives and basically dictate whether we live or die. That's a pretty drastic measure. The doomer take, but it's going to happen, and it's been happening. They're going to use the government as a means of controlling the people more and more. The more we get hooked onto welfare and states that dictates whether we live or die, the more we're going to live or die by the government.
Okay. Next question I have, do you think there's a relationship between welfare state and democracy?
I think there definitely could be one. A lot of people in the United States cannot go out and vote because of economic conditions. Voting, like election day, is not a national holiday, so some people have to choose between going to work and voting, especially if they don't have mail-in voting or anything like that. Also, some people live very far away from polling stations, so they have to drive a long ways. So yeah, I do think economic development can correlate, maybe not cause, an increase in the amount of people being able to vote, the voter turnout, and all of that. Yeah.
Sure. I think. Wait, what's the question again?
About democracy and the welfare state. Do you see a correlation? Do you think they're the same? Do you think they go hand in hand? Democracy and the welfare state.
I love that you asked this question. One of the main foundings of biopolitics is the loss of democracy the more reliant we are on the government. LBJ knew this. That's why he said we're going to have these inwards voting for years. Why do you think he said that? Because when people are hooked to the government and the government determines whether you live or die, you have to vote in favor of government power or else you die. That is not democracy to me. That's coercion.
Okay, I'm gonna just ask one more question. So, do you think the welfare state will wither away in the era of globalization, or do you think that it will become even more? And I'm only talking about America here too. I'm not talking about world, even though I'm talking about globalization. What do you think the effect of globalization will have on the American welfare state?
I think that's really interesting. I'm not sure if the globalization is going to have a direct impact on the welfare state. I do think the welfare state is going to continue to increase. We can see even Biden says, the era of big government is over. Also introducing things like a minimum 15% corporate tax rate, stuff like that. I do think the welfare state could increase. I don't know about America specifically, but worldwide, I believe so. Yeah.
I think we have one more from Young Brother. Said, repower over life, death with the government. What does the kid think of the state's role in maintaining police, military? The ceding of force of a public body seems to be the main purpose of government.
Specifically, when it comes to the military / the police, I believe that the military is the prime example of biopolitics. We have to live in America, under America's rule, or else America can hold the military, the police department, at threat to the workers, the United citizens, the citizens of the United States. That's why it's paramount to have 300 million plus Americans armed with their Second Amendment right with a gun. Because the first thing you do, and Marx talks about this themselves, for any authoritarian government is to disarm the people. That's what we see multiple times in the USSR. That's what we see in Germany, in Hitler's Germany. The first thing they do to basically authorize their government is to disarm the people.
Okay. All right. So I guess we can go into closing statements and final thoughts. So, Foxglove, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I think I did a pretty good job providing data and evidence that the welfare state and welfare programs.
Is he cutting out for everybody?
He cut out for me.
Yeah, he cut out for me.
Okay. Foxglove, can you hear us?
Test. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Okay. Am I cutting out at all?
Not yet, but you haven't said much.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think I did a good job of explaining the benefits and stats on welfare, the different issues that it tackles, including anything from children to the elderly to the disabled. And yeah, I think I did a pretty good job explaining why it is the best and pretty much only system to handle the job of reducing poverty, especially for non-workers. I don't believe my opponent provided a particularly persuasive argument with his three-pronged solution on tackling poverty. I do think that unions and I do think that immigration can help grow the economy and subsequently decrease poverty. But these things are not mutually exclusive with welfare, and I think these things work in great conjunction together. I do not think that you have to divest from welfare to fund these things. That's the economy and the government budget is not a zero-sum game. There's discretionary spending. There's lots of different assets and faculties to government spending. And yeah, I still believe, my mind hasn't really changed, obviously, that welfare is the best system for what it purports to do, which is reduce poverty.
Okay, thank you. So, Cutsleeve.
Right. So, my Foxglove, my opponent, is a very good debater. He went in this trying to debate that welfare decreases poverty. And when I conceded out the gate that welfare could, in fact, decrease poverty, he was shocked with no end goal in mind and cluelessly ran around the debate trying to poke holes in my three-pronged solution that he obviously didn't research for. And I don't fault him for researching the different solutions to welfare. It's a tricky problem to tackle these problems. But instead of looking at a multi-dimensional analysis of whether something's good or not, he decides to look at a one-dimensional analysis. Poverty. I look at a multi-dimensional analysis, single-parent structures, crime, poverty is one of them, but also worker happiness, how many people we have living, breathing. That's why I advocate for Medicaid. The main problem, the main distinction with our two debate tactics is Foxglove comes in with one solution, one goal in mind, to prove that welfare decreases poverty. I conceded that. Now working on that one dimension of analysis, you would think that he have won the debate, but obviously he didn't, because my solutions also not only decrease poverty, but doesn't link or doesn't have the problems of biopolitics, doesn't have the problems of Boston democracy, doesn't have the problems of single parent households, which I did provide the study of a causative link for. And I do have solutions that address poverty. So not only do I have more solutions that are more effective at the thing that we're solving, but we avoid the problems that were brought up and conceded throughout the debate. I do not think my opponent made a convincing argument that welfare doesn't link to biopolitics. He has not made a convincing argument that welfare doesn't lead to the increase of single-parent households. And he has not made any effective holes in my solutions. And actually, when we did a line by line of each solution, he agreed with them. So he's essentially an opponent that agrees with the solutions and conceded the problems. I think this debate was set from the beginning when I decided to shift my strategy and look at a multi-dimensional analysis of welfare rather than just looking at poverty. I yield.
All right. Thank you guys both for coming on. And yeah, you guys can vote. We have a poll. It's up in our community section on the YouTube page. So you guys can go vote on who you think won the debate, and make sure to leave a comment on your reasoning, constructive criticism. I'm sure both debaters would love constructive criticism, not asshole comments. So thank you again for coming on. That was a good debate. It's a different debate than we've been doing lately. So it was nice. We're going to be off tomorrow. We will be back on Thursday with a debate from Mayo and Sonzel on the America First ideology. So that one should be fun. And then Friday we have a panel. It's going to have 4 surprise topics. Each guest will be picking a topic, and we will all find out what those topics are on the panel. So. And then on Saturday, we have Mrs. Fascist debating Kay Fellows on witchcraft and feminism. So we got fun stuff coming up. Our schedule is on our Twitter page or our Discord, so you guys can go check out there. Other than that, thank you all for coming on. Todd, you got anything before we go?
Nah, Foxglove and Cutsleeve, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Good night, folks.